As a listener of this podcast, you know that United Methodist Communications is dedicated to education and training. Perhaps you've dug even deeper through our articles, email newsletter, or even one of the webinars or Facebook Live sessions we've done. But what happens when you have a specific question or need in your local church or community? Thank you to everybody for listening. My name is Dan Wunderlich. I'm a United Methodist pastor, and our guest today is Craig Catlett. Craig is the Senior Manager of Local Church Services at United Methodist Communications, and he's here to let us know about some of the ways you can work directly with us for your local church and context. Craig, thanks so much for being with us today.
This is exciting. Thanks, Dan.
Well, let's begin by having you share a bit about yourself and what you do for United Methodist Communications.
Well, I started out as a communications trainer for United Methodist Communications. I did a lot of online training, and then I travel around and do face-to-face trainings for pastors and lay leaders. And most of the time we talk about general church marketing. We talk about social media. We talk about, what makes a good website. And then there was a position open where I get to take all of this information and apply it, like really put the rubber to the road. And if a church calls in and they're like, hey, I need some help with a particular area, I get to come up with the solutions for them. And so I've got a pretty neat job.
That's great. And when most people think of our organization, they no doubt think about all these educational and training resources, especially if they're listening to this podcast. And they may even think of the kind of things that we do for the denomination as a whole in the realms of marketing and advertising. But UMCom's mission and ministry really covers a broad spectrum from the denomination worldwide to the local churches, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We've always handled the worldwide advertising for the church, and we've also done some of the local stuff as well over the years. But just recently, just this past year, we really turned our attention and resources toward answering the question, how can we serve the local church? And it's really blossomed into something really beautiful.
That's great. And before we jump into some of the details about the services that UMCom offers to local churches, can you talk to us about what is generally in place at churches that find success using these resources? So, for example, we can set up a church with a great looking website that engages and invites their community. But if they just want a website because you're supposed to have one and they don't actually have a heart for or plan for welcoming visitors, it really isn't going to help. So in your experience working with local congregations, what kind of foundations or resources or even just attitudes and perspectives, no matter the church size or style, what sets up a church for success?
Well, you really shouldn't spend a dollar on any type of marketing or advertising until you get some church leaders to sit around a table and really discuss who you are as a church. What are your values? What's the pulse, the heartbeat of your church? If there's one thing that I've learned over the 4 years just working with churches here at United Methodist Communications, it's that churches are always looking for the next big thing, the next catchy thing that's really going to catch everyone's attention, but they have no idea who they are. I've had some people, put on conferences and things, and they'll pay for advertising. They'll put a billboard out there, or they'll create a landing page, but no one comes. And they're like, well, what happened? Well, with branding, you've got to get yourself into the community for an extended period of time for people to recognize your brand. And this counts for churches too, for people to figure out who you are and figure out whether or not they belong there. So you got to have the values piece in place. And then the next foundational piece is really identifying what your brand is, what you guys look like. Once you get, that branding piece in place, you start to apply it on a website. You start to put it on Facebook. You start to put it on print material, all of those things.
And what kinds of mindsets do you really feel like churches need to have before they reach out? So we understand ourselves, we understand our communities. There's got to be a heart aspect to it too, right?
Oh, sure. Well, it's difficult in church sometimes, especially when the same core of people have been at any given church for a good 10 or 15 or 20 years or whatever. Things just become really routine, and you get used to the type of people you see every Sunday. This is no, surprise to anyone out here listening to this. Church can become cliquey sometimes.
Right.
We have this very inward focus on things. And of course, we want people to come join us in the pews, but we don't really want to do anything different than what we're doing to attract these other people. And when people don't show up, we're like, oh, what's going on with this? So if we can start to think about what it's like to walk into our church building for the first time, that is a great place to start thinking as another person would about what would make another person feel welcome before they walk in those doors. And that's a nice piece. That's an important piece.
That's great, and you set it up wonderfully. Put the ball on the tee for me to say that we have got all sorts of episodes for this podcast in our archive, and all sorts of articles all over MyCom to help you do just what Craig is talking about. Both that first piece of identifying the mission and specific target community, and learning how to connect with them. We've also got pieces on our site. There's plenty of pieces on umdiscipleship.org that'll help you really create that heart for visitors, and having those things in place are what is going to set up a church for communication success. Because again, Craig is essentially nicely saying that if you don't have the communication piece figured out and you don't have the heart for people, we're really just going to be throwing our money away. So,
Sure.
Craig, we've mentioned websites. Let's start there. It says on our site that we have set up more than 360 local church sites in the last 2 years. That is an average of one every other day. So first off, Craig, you and your team, good work. That's an amazing number of things to have set up for our local churches. And for the churches out there who either don't have a website or really need to transition to something new, how can we help?
Well, a website has to live somewhere. It doesn't just float out there, and it can live with us. Your church website can live with us, just on the servers, just down the hall from my cubicle area. We've got a great team of people in our IT department that make sure everything runs smoothly. If you need to upgrade your website, we can facilitate that transfer to our servers. We use WordPress. That's what a lot of the internet runs on, is a WordPress website. That's the template. It's the software that you can build it a certain way, and a bunch of people get in on WordPress and create these things called plugins that make WordPress really nice and easy to use. So if you don't have a WordPress website, you can switch your site over to us, and we can get you started on a new WordPress website. We do a lot of the building on our end. Sometimes pastors, lay leaders know enough to, once we get you switched over, you can get started, and we just do a little coaching and help you out. Sometimes we do a build from the ground up. Just depends on where you're at.
And this is a great example of one of those things where before I started researching this episode, I had no idea that we offered hosting. And I have been doing church websites, and specifically WordPress church websites, for over a decade, going back to when I was in college campus ministry. And, we had to have websites because we were on the cutting edge working with young folks. And I had no idea that we offered hosting. And I would assume that the pricing is competitive to most of the services out there churches are already using.
Oh, very much so. It's around $5 a month for the basic package that most church leaders would need. Sometimes, if let's say for instance, one of the strong points of the service is the preaching, and it's the pastor's really dynamic, and he or she really has it going. Maybe you video that, and you're putting your videoed sermons on every Sunday. You're going to need more storage than that. So maybe you might need the $20 a month package. But most people can get by with just the $5 a month package. It gives, I think it is 5 gigs of storage, and that's pretty good. And it gives you 5 emails, professional emails for everyone in the church. The church administrator may have an email to his or her name, and the pastor at First United Methodist Church, that will be in there. So it gives you a more professional feel than maybe a Gmail account or something like that. And of course, the service, we do all the technical end service for you. That's all in-house United Methodist people.
And this may be a little bit of a technical question, but some folks may be asking this. If we want to switch over to WordPress hosting through you all, and we're happy with our WordPress theme, are we able to bring our theme with us? Or do we have to use the UMCom theme? Or for someone who's starting from scratch, who doesn't even know what I'm talking about when it comes to themes, do you all have United Methodist themes that you can offer for us?
You can bring your WordPress theme. In most cases, there's never a 100%, but in most cases, you can bring your WordPress theme. And we have a big selection of WordPress themes on hand as well. I wouldn't call them United Methodist themes per se, except that we throw the cross and the flame on there when you want us to, or whatever logo you got.
Right.
But we have a few that we're partial to, but we've got a library of roughly 40 something that you can choose from.
That's so great. So basically, if you are starting from nothing and you know that you need a website, you have a heart for your community and for using that website to connect and invite folks, UMCom is the place to go to set you up. And if you're maybe someone who's getting frustrated with using a commercial host, or you're just wanting to use something that you know is going to be reliable and run by people you can count on, it sounds like we're a pretty decent option to switch over to there. Craig, is there anything else on the website kind of front of things you wanted to talk about?
Well, absolutely. We've got a website grant that's pretty popular. I think we signed up 300 people just last year for the grant. And we pay for a whole year of web hosting for you. And there's a domain registration fee. We take care of that for you as well. And so the whole year, you won't have to concern yourself with whatever you're paying right now for your hosting. Or if you've never started a church website before, you're not going to be out of pocket for that. So all you have to do is there's one single grants page that I can refer to throughout this interview. You go to that page and you fill out the application, and we get back in touch with you the next couple of days. And so we really try to take care of everything for you, price wise and customer service wise. We'll try to take care of you.
Oh, that's great. Okay, let's move to social media. We talk about it a ton on this podcast and in the articles on our site. We also host webinars from time to time, both on YouTube, which get streamed through our UMCom site. We also do some Facebook Live. So, side note, be sure to follow United Methodist Communications on Facebook. But, Craig, how can ministry leaders and organizations seek out more individualized help or resources from us?
Well, there's quite a number of things that we can offer. We have a social media specialist on the local church services team, and all that she does is handle social media. So if your church needs individualized attention to the social media accounts, we can do a social media audit for you. We can do a basic Facebook account creation. We can create an Instagram account for you, social media coaching. We can even customize a few posts and send them to you. We've got a vault of Facebook posts. We can throw together some of those and send them to you. In some instances, we can sit down and, in the midst of the coaching, we can figure out maybe you need a particular kind of post for an event. We can help craft that for you. We can do a Facebook follower campaign, all of those things.
That's great. And I know that you are piloting a new partnership with an organization called Burlap. Burlap comes out of United Methodist Church of the Resurrection, or at least a couple of their staff members, Chris Folmsby and Chris Abel.
Yep.
It's an organization that is dedicated to training and resourcing ministries for reaching millennials and Gen Z and any of the emerging generations. And they've got a new social media program that they are putting together and offering. They've partnered with United Methodist Communications. Can you share a bit about what this initial class of churches is going to have access to and what the prospects are for future involvement?
Sure. Well, the guys over there at Burlap, they've been great, easy to work with. Bruce and Chris, good couple of guys. So we're really happy with them. You can get, with the grant, 6 days worth of Facebook posts. It's one post a day. They'll usually have something that is an inspirational quote or scripture or something like that with an artistic backdrop. So the words are superimposed on top of that. And it's, United Methodist approved content. I think most of the time they'll pull from a very popular translation for United Methodist, the NRSV. And so that's the advantage of going with someone that is United Methodist. But so they do all the legwork for you in that regard. And so that's really nice.
And when you say 6 days, that's 6 days a week, and they provide you with new content each week. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a new post 6 days a week, and the posts are not the same from week to week.
Okay, that's great. And so we've got an initial class of churches going through that. They're kind of signed up for this next year. Do you all foresee an opportunity for new churches to join in on that, or is there a way for churches to go to Burlap directly to join that program?
So you'll want to come visit us again in August. We'll probably open the application period back up again. We're tweaking it. We're changing a few things here and there, trying to optimize it. We've gotten some feedback this year about various things that people want to add to this. So the package will look maybe slightly different next year, but it's still going to be, advantageous to everyone. So if you just come to the umcom.org website and go to the services products section at the top and under local church grants, you'll be able to see when we open back up that application, probably around in August.
That's so great. And I would say, even if you feel like you're fairly up to speed on social media, having someone like the experts on the Communications team do an audit of your Facebook page or your Instagram account, have them take a look at your posts. And it never hurts to have a fresh set of eyes, especially someone whose job it is to stay up with what's working online. I would really encourage, I don't want to flood your office, Craig, but I would really encourage our listeners, even if they're feeling fairly self-confident about their social media skills, it never hurts to have a fresh set of eyes. Are there any other tips or ideas or resources beyond our articles and the audits and the grants that you want to say about social media?
Not social media wise, no. I mean, there's other things that we can do other than what we've talked about. The person that does all of the audits and the Facebook account creation and all that, she used to work doing the social media for HGTV.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I know, yeah, she's done some really she's handled some personal clients that were on The Voice and did their social media. She really knows her stuff. And of course, the interim director of our department right now used to run the Facebook page for the UMC, Stephen Adair. He's the interim director. And so we've got a lot of social media expertise sitting on our team. So
Oh, that's awesome.
between all
Yeah,
of us,
Stephen.
go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen's been on the program before. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
All right, well, this won't apply to everyone, but no doubt there are a few church planters out there or church plant staff or volunteers. Can you quickly share how we support some of our newest congregations in the denomination?
So the New Church Start grant is extremely popular. Ever since it's been going, we've maxed it out every year. We basically provide a budget and then someone that can do some consulting and help you figure out how to spend the budget on promotional items that help showcase your church throughout the year, whether it's a tent and a tablecloth, because you're trying to get awareness out there in the community. You want to make sure that you have people and product on site so that people can see you, t-shirts and all kinds of things like that, signage. And sometimes churches might need a new logo or brand. Oftentimes when they come to us, they've already done that part of it, but sometimes we'll get a situation where a new church start will need some branding help, and so we help with that too.
That's so vitally important. All of those branded items, especially when you're early on. And of course, I'll just touch this very lightly, but those who have been with us for a while know that when we talk about branding and when we talk about marketing and advertising, it is all in service of the mission of the church. We are not creating a lifestyle brand. We're not trying to become Instagram influencers beyond being influencers for the kingdom. But sometimes that takes a tent you can see from 10 miles away because it is the color of your church. And making things like colors and logos and branding familiar in your community is how you're going to start building some of those connections. So as someone who knows many church planners, Craig, I want to thank you all for being so dedicated to these new and upcoming ministries.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk media, and we'll start on the production side. This is a United Methodist Communications podcast, but fun fact, I have never actually stepped foot inside the UMCom building there in Nashville. I have done a podcast of my own for a while, and so I've got all the gear here at my house. But if I were to show up there and visit you at your office, Craig, I would find a pretty impressive setup. So what kind of media production are you all able to do there in Nashville, and how can local churches tap into those resources?
Well, let me address the first part first. I love our studios. I mean, whenever anyone comes to UMCom, that's one of the first places I take them. I take them downstairs to show, because it's a big studio. We've had, country stars that rent our studio out. Dolly Parton has been in our studio. Emmylou Harris has been in our studio. I think it was Rascal Flatts. Don't quote me on that one yet, but I'm pretty sure it was Rascal Flatts. Was in our studio recording things. That we've got a great studio. We've got 4 or 5 editing bays of really great equipment, and so yeah, I mean it's really top notch. We've got some very nice cameras. If anyone out there is a videophile, we've got the Ursa Blackmagic 4K cameras that we use, and we've filmed so many commercials for the church in our studios and distribute those. So we're just so blessed and thankful. We've had these studios, I've only been with the agency 4 years, but we've had them decades. So anyway, the studios are great. Now, how we use the studios to help the local church, the actual big studio, we will film, we partner with other agencies and they'll come in and they'll film their content in our studios, of course, and distribute that through their agency, whether it be GBOD or GBHEM or something like that, coming in and using our studios. So we kind of partner with other agencies and that makes its way to the local church. But we've made several radio commercials that I've been in charge of in our studios, and the editing is done there in those bays. And so we did some of that last year. I think I made 4 or 5 commercials for some local churches last year. Now, before everyone gets very excited, that's a very nuanced thing, and the conditions have to be just right before we do any type of media buy for a church. Everyone would take a personalized commercial or something like that, but of course we can't. The budget won't allow for that. So
Sure, absolutely.
anyway,
But it does never hurt to reach out, right? If
no,
there
no.
if there are folks
So
that want to create a connection and talk through what they're dreaming through, even if we can't specifically fund or create the resources, we can help you think through the strategy and think through the practical things you would need in place to make it a success.
And we've set up our application this year to that end. So every application for a service or grant that we get this year comes through me, and I sit down and I go through the application and I try to feel out what's going on here. I usually give you a phone call and we'll talk through where you're at and what you need. And we always try to give somebody something. We want to help as many churches as possible this year and make sure that you get equipped in some shape, form, or fashion. So whatever is on your mind, fill out that application, or you can even phone in or send us an email, and I will talk to you, and we'll try to figure out how we can service you.
Well, to close, could you share a success story with us? Is there a ministry or an organization out there in the United Methodist umbrella that you can think of who's been able to leverage the resources and services that United Methodist Communications offers to make an impact on their community for the kingdom of God?
Well, absolutely. Last year, there were so many churches, and we spent a lot of our time and energy and resources to resource churches during the Christmas season. So some of the results are still rolling in as churches get back to me with how the promotional products and the media buys affected them last year. But there was one church in New Jersey, Woodland, New Jersey, and they used our promotional products. See, we gave them a tent and a tablecloth and a bunch of water bottles and T-shirts and all kinds of stuff that they used to create a block party. And or rather, let me back up. They became a part of an existing block party, and their building was hard to find, and nobody knew where they were. But then they have this big setup there, and they had several people come by their booth, talk to them. They gave away their stuff, and that very Sunday, they actually had 2 more people show up for church just from the block party. And that's a great turnaround. We did some radio ads for a church in Atlanta, a multicultural church. And they had a couple of people come in. It was during the World Cup. It was a multicultural church with some people represented from the Latino community. And so they said, hey, let's do it. Let's do a World Cup ad. And we did that in Spanish. And sure enough, we had a couple people show up from that. There's a couple churches we did a media buy for movie theaters. And they got several mentions. There's just so many. It's hard to narrow it all down because last year was very busy. We did so many things for various churches.
Well, Craig, do you have any last programs, last invitations, or just any words of encouragement for our listeners out there doing the hard work of church marketing?
Sure. So church marketing is hard work, and pastors aren't prepared for it most of the time. It wasn't a focus in seminary years ago. When they were preparing our clergy for today. And even recently, I don't know that the seminaries have picked up this focus yet. So if you're a church leader and you're out there struggling to figure out how to get yourself out there, I get it. It's hard. And marketing always has this weird feel to it. Like, it's kind of this worldly thing. But if you're trying to get your church out there, all you're really trying to do is talk about how you understand Jesus and get your slice of Christianity out there to your community. That's all you're trying to do, is tell the truth about what you think and you believe and how you help people. So if you're having trouble with that, hopefully we can help you. You go to umcom.org. In the drop down, it's the second from the left. You use the drop down, it says services and products, and you select local church grants. That'll take you straight to the local church grants application, the web grant application. We talked about that earlier. That's on that page. So do one of those two grants. We've got three application periods for our services and grants that we're working through this year. The first one is 2 weeks, starting next week. Next week at the time of this recording anyway, February the 4th through the 15th. And then we have another one coming up in May the 20th through the 31st. And then our last service grant application period for the year is September the 2nd through the 13th. And if you don't make the cutoff for the first application period, maybe you'll make the second or third. And it's our mission and our heart to reach out and help you tell your story, to say what you think about why God can help the people of your community. We want to help you do that.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm glad I could come on and talk to you.
And now, listeners, we want to hear from you. Which of these resources are you planning on taking advantage of? Which of these opportunities are you going to blow up Craig's inbox just dying to be a part of? And what ways can we continue to partner with you and your local church to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world? Email us at podcast@umcom.org, and we just might share your story or your thoughts on a future episode. And you can, of course, always use that email, podcast@umcom.org, to send us any feedback or topic suggestions you have for the show. We love hearing from you. Finally, if you found this podcast to be helpful and you'd like to make sure that other church communicators like yourself find this resource, the two biggest things you can do are share this episode with your friends and colleagues and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, or whatever service you're using to listen to us right now. Thanks again for listening to the MyCom Church Marketing Podcast.